everyone. It's far too warm. How are you? Hi, far too warm. We're chat. We're very funny with its original dad joke. Hi, everybody. How you doing? It's it, there's too much heat. I don't know why my cat has chosen to wear his thickest fur coat. But all he does at the moment is try to cuddle up to stay cool, and then lie on the floor complaining that it's too hot. Will he let me brush him to try and remove some of the thickness of the fur and the mats that have taken place within it? No. No, he won't. So, you know, like a Brit at this time of year, all he will do is complain, but do nothing to actually mitigate the suffering. I'm Sam, and you are listening to Literacy, where this evening, as I've said in chat, it's not as long a stream planned as usual. Certainly not as long as last time, where I committed to reading The Willows, and that took close to 3 hours. Complaining is a method of mitigating suffering. Yes, complaint equity is a thing, and you know, also so is swearing. That's been tested and proved. Tell you what, should we just have stream outside today? Everyone pick up your books, we're going outside. Oh, I wish. It's music festival tonight, but it's too hot, you're not going. Is that... Hang on. That's not the... see, what I learned was a thing in France when we, as this Eden, got invited to go and play at a cafe a couple of times was... Is it like... Fête de la musique, which, you know, you say it in French words, in a French accent, and it sounds, ooh, fancy is music. It is Fête de la musique. Awesome. Yeah, national thing. Hell yeah. I know what that is. That's super cool. I do not blame you for not going out, but I love it as an institution. You can hear me brighten right up, can't you? I love it as a thing where it's like, you know what? We're just going to like nationally sanction everyone playing music, and ideally, right, where I forget the name of the little town that we went to. But yeah, they had. My understanding was the idea is that like venues, places, whatever, cafes, restaurants, whoever the hell else, gets like live bands to come and play, and mostly what it seems to be was people just like jamming some like setting up a PA and jamming some speakers outside and playing some tunes, which is fine. But yeah, there was a cafe that we had some contacts to that wanted us to go and play there. So like, yeah, all right, we're gonna play in France. Time for your live music all around the city tonight. Hell yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, I love that. I genuinely love it as a thing. I wish we would do it here. It wouldn't work here because Brits and late night culture is... I mean, I don't think I need to... I need to state our attitudes to what we do when left out late is get drunk and fight in the streets. Oh yes, some resubs. Thank you. Thunder, thank you very much for the 45 months. This is your award for dissertation editing. And you also said you thanked us for the 45 months? No, thank you for those. And Angeline, thank you for the 23 months. It's hot, but not too hot for pressing buttons. People have already been trying to press buttons. Ooh, Sam looked like Winnie the Pooh one time. Shut up. That's some Polish words. Oh, I ain't gonna be able to pronounce those right first time. There's a reason some pubs here ban the Brits on the premises. We've earned that, and we need to do some work, perhaps, on ourselves. Some personal development on our relations with alcohol and what we do when the weather is warm. When in a dehydrated state, we will go, let's drink even more, and then pick a fight. And yeah, but as a concept, opening up places in the evening and kind of closing off roads so that it's just towns and cities and things can, jam some music in public. It's great. I love that. I wish we could do it here. But that's not what we're doing this evening. You have late night bars and clubs, working at late night coffee shops and libraries, right? Like that. It would. This is again very brief old man rant incoming. Although again, I don't think I've got like a second half of the stream planned. So I've got some stuff I'm going to read until we're done, and then I'm going to stop. So whatever. It is. Oh, Stephen, thank you for the 40 months. Hello. This is sublime indeed. I still both love and hate the lo-fi charm of that emote. I can say this as the person that made it. The little spinning star on the end that's just like, "Hi, I'm here," as it flashes through. It makes me laugh, and no, there was an attempt. You make it in time for the sublime old man rant. So yes, you did. It's not a particularly big one or even impassioned one this time. It's just I don't understand. In a sense I do, but I don't understand why business hours or working in teaching in schools and working in offices and normal your 9 to 5 business hours when people work are the exact same 9 to 5 business hours for shops and cafes. And as I say, in one sense I do understand that, because otherwise you are asking one of those groups of people to work antisocial hours, or hours when, so you're asking people who, and it's probably frankly to stop people going, "Hey, you worked one job, what about doing two? You finished that one at 5 and now you can go at 6 into the next one and work through the evening. Wouldn't that be good?" But it's always struck me as weird and and unproductive that people go to work to earn the money to go to shops and go to cafes and things like that, and then at the moment at which they come out and are maybe like, "Hey," I mean, obviously there are restaurants that are open in the evening. I know that not everywhere shuts down, but it's like your shops are open when so many people who would be your customers aren't available to come out to the shop because they're also working. And so then all the commerce is done on a Saturday, also when you have to work in a shop, when everyone's free. And it's like, is this not massively expensive to your operating costs to essentially just run shops during the day where a much smaller proportion of your customer base can get to you? I don't know. It's like, obviously, if we're going to start criticizing and critiquing the working world, hey, your 9 to 5 is really more of an 8 to 6, and you have to pay to go to work, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of questions, and give us a 4-day work week instead. All these things. But the number of times I've just had that thought of there's just shops on the high street that have to be open in case some foot traffic comes through. But the woman can do the shopping. Yes, indeed. But where are they going to put it? They don't have pockets. So it's just always struck me as sort of unproductive to have your shop open for the same business hours that the vast majority of people who would come in to do the shopping are working. And so we got the shop open but no one's coming in. Are you just leaving work? Great, we're just closing. And yeah, that's got really nothing to do with any of the stuff I'm reading today, but hey, welcome in. You like working weekends because it meant you had a day free in the week. Yeah. Things like getting appointments, you can only go during the hours you were working. Yeah, yes, getting doctor's appointments that are oh yeah, well, again, it's you can't really expect people to want to work super unusual hours, but also it's deeply unhelpful to me as someone, say, with a 9 to 5. Currently, I'm not, but, you know, speaking in the past when I have been, like, oh, I'm on a 9 to 5, and I need to make an appointment for someone. You also work 9 to 5? I do. Great. That's actually a real problem for me. So you're having to, like, book time off work for, you know, it's just take a quick holiday for the privilege of needing a doctor's appointment or something. It's, yeah. Local fast food places is doing good business on workday lunchtime. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like if you just open up for those hours, I realise I would be the first person to try and go to a shop and like, oh great, it's 3 in the afternoon. I'm going to go to. Oh, they're shut, or they don't open until 6 p.m. Oh, I would complain. I'm just going to complain. Hence, you know, grumpy old man rant. Yeah, we take walk-ins between the hours of 11:45 and 11:49 on Tuesday. Brought to you by the same person that schedules rural bus routes. Anyway, yeah. So I don't have a full 2 hours worth of reading planned for tonight. This was maybe evident for me just flapping my gums here. But what I've done is I've picked out some other Algernon Blackwood that I enjoyed, because happy Saturday, everybody. We made it to summer solstice. The day's only going to get shorter from here. Sorry to bring you the bad news, but the trade-off is that it's warm and the day is yet still long. For me, certainly, at least, life's protagonist. And so I thought it would be nice to read some lovely summertime Algernon Blackwood stories. So I have a short selection. You live for spooky time? How spooky are these ones? They're more... These are the ones I've picked out, and I may not do all of them, I don't know. It could be quite a lot. They're not so much spooky as weird, but it's a bit of both. So yeah, I don't know. Would you like me to just pick one? Tell you what. I'll pick the first one. I'll give you the titles of the others, and then, as a way to drive chat engagement, you have to have some appropriately cold beverages. I have a bottle of cold water. That is it. I was sad, actually. As a beer drinker and a shopper of Co-op, it's a chain of shops in the UK. I use their I'm a member. I have effectively a membership card. It's an app on my phone, as it all is now. And this week it's like, oh, I have £1 off Sharp's beer, and Sharp's make Doom Bar, which, you know, is pretty nice in this weather if you like that sort of thing. And I was like, okay. And I scoured the shelves and they had none. So yeah, I'm just on cold water, which is fine, and probably definitely healthier. So, you know, how it goes. Right. What would I like to read first? I also haven't, like, brushed up on any of these today, so this is going to be a little bit of a sketchy reading. That's fine. I think I'm going to read 2 in 1, because not only is it, or has it been, a lovely warm summer day, it is also June and still Pride Month, and this always felt just a little bit, maybe unintentionally, probably unintentionally on Blackwood's part, always felt like a little bit of a trans story. And why not? Why not make a story in June about that? So that's where I'm going to start. But the other 3 that I have planned, if you would like to make some choices, like, you know, in order of preference and reach a consensus, I will, because I don't realise if I say the name, you know, maybe we could get through. Who knows? That's not gonna. You know what? No, let's just try and get through all of them. I'm just sitting here dithering. We can probably do all of these. 2 of them are very short. So, yeah, let's kick off. Hang on, where was the one? There we go. Page 75, 2 in 1. Right, that's there. Your first story is pinned at the top of chat. We'll see how this goes. I'm probably going to flub and trip over things, because as I say, I haven't read this since the last time I read it. Hell of a sentence. But let's go for it. See how we go. If we are already sitting comfortably, pinned under cats, and enjoying what weather we have, then I shall begin with 2 in 1 by Algernon Blackwood. Some idle talker, playing with half-truths, had once told him that he was too self-centered to fall into love, out of himself. He was unwilling to lose himself in another, and that was the reason he had never married. But Lemaitre was not really more of an egoist than is necessary to make a useful man. A too selfless person is ever ineffective. The suggestion, nevertheless, had remained to distress, for he was no great philosopher, merely a writer of successful tales of wild nature. Chiefly the human interest, a publisher's term, was weak. Sorry, I got that sentence wrong. Tales of wild nature, chiefly. The human interest, a publisher's term, was weak. The great divine enigma of an undeveloped soul, certainly of a lover's or a woman's soul, had never claimed his attention enough, perhaps. He was somewhat too much detached from human life. Nature had laid so powerful a spell upon his heart. "I hope she won't be late," ran the practical thought across his mind as he waited that early Sunday morning in the great central station, and reflected that it was the cleanest, brightest, and most airy terminus of all London. He had promised her the whole day out, a promise somewhat long neglected. He was not conscious of doing an unselfish act, yet, on the whole, probably, he would rather, or just as soon, have been alone. The air was fragrant, and the sunshine blazed in soft white patches on the line. The maddening loveliness of an exceptional spring danced everywhere into his heart. Yes, he rather wished he were going off into the fields and woods alone instead of with her. Only, she was really a dear person, far more now, than secretary and typist, more even than the devoted girl who had nursed him through that illness. A friend, she was. The years of their working together had made her that, and she was wise and gentle. Oh, yes, it would be delightful to have her with him. How she would enjoy the long sunny day. Then he saw her coming towards him through the station. In a patch of sunshine she came, as though the light produced her, came suddenly from the middle of a group of men in flannels carrying golf sticks. And he smiled his welcome a little paternally, trying to kill the selfish thought that he would rather have been alone. Soft things fluttered about her. The big hat was becoming. He was dressed in brown, he believed. He bought a Sunday paper. "I must buy one too," she laughed. She chose one with pictures, chose it at random, rather. He had never heard its name, even. And in a first-class carriage alone, he meant to do it really well, they raced through a world of sunshine and brilliant fields to Amersham. She was very happy. She tried every seat in turn. The blazing sheets of yellow, such a spring for buttercups there had never been, drew her from side to side. She put her head out and nearly lost her big hat, and the soft, fluttering thing she wore streamed behind her like the colour of escaping flowers. She opened both windows. The very carriage held the perfume of May that floated over the whole countryside. He was very nice to her, but read his paper, though always ready with a smile and answer when she asked for them. She teased and laughed and chattered. The luncheon packages engaged her serious attention. Never for a moment was she still, trying every corner in turn, putting her feet up, and bouncing to enjoy the softness of the first-class cushions. "You'll be sitting in the rack next," he suggested, but her head was out of the window again and she did not hear him. She was radiant as a child. His paper interested him, book reviews or something. "I've asked you that 3 times, you know, already," he heard her laughing opposite, and with a touch of shame he tossed the paper through the window. There, I'd quite forgotten her again, he thought with a touch of shame. I must pull myself together. For it was true. He had, for the moment, more than once, forgotten her existence, just as though he really were alone. Together they strolled down through the beech woods towards Amersham, he forever dropping the luncheon packages, which she picked up again and tried to stuff into his pockets, for she refused to carry anything at all. "It's my day out, not yours, remember. I do no work today." And he caught her happiness, pausing to watch her while she picked flowers and leaves and all the rest, and disentangling without the least impatience that soft, fluttering thing she wore when it caught in thorns, and even talking with her about this wild spring glory, as though she were just the companion that he needed out of all the world. He no longer felt quite so conscious of her objective presence as at first. In the train, for instance, he had felt so vividly aware that she was there. Alternately, he had forgotten and remembered her presence. Now it was better. They were more together, as it were. "I wish I were alone," he thought once more, as the beauty of the spring called to him tumultuously, and he longed to lie and dream it all, unhampered by another's presence. Then, even while thinking, he realized that he was alone. It was curious. This happened even in their first wood when they went downhill into Amersham. As they left it and passed again into the open, it came, and on its heels, as he watched her moving here and there, light-footed as a child or nymph, there came this other instinctive thought. I wish I were 10 years younger than I am. The first time in all his life, probably, that such a thought had ever bothered him. Apparently he said it aloud, laughingly, as he watched her dancing movements, for she turned and ran up to his side quickly, her little face quite beneath the big hat's rim. "You are." That answer struck him as rather wonderful. Who was she, after all? And in Amersham they hired the Griffin, a rickety old cart, drawn by a still more rickety horse, to drive them to Penn's Woods. She, with her own money, bought stone-bottle ginger beer, 2 bottles. It made her day complete to have those bottles, though unless they had driven she would have done without them. The street was deserted, drenched in blazing sunshine. Rooks were cawing in the elms behind the church. Not a soul was about as they crawled away from the houses and passed upwards between hedges smothered in cow parsley over the hill. She had kept her picture paper. It lay on her lap all the way. She never opened it or turned a single page, but she held it in her lap. They drove in silence. The old man on the box was like a faded, weather-beaten farmer dressed in somebody else's cast-off Sunday coat. He flicked the horse with a tattered whip. Sometimes he grunted. Plover rose in the fields, cuckoos called, butterflies danced sideways past the carriage, eyeing them. And, as they passed through Penn Street, Lemaitre started suddenly and said something. Or, again, he had quite forgotten she was there. What a selfish beast I am! Why can't I forget myself and my own feelings and look after her and make her feel amused and happy? It's her day out, not mine. This somehow was the way he put it to himself, just as any ordinary man would have put it. But when he turned to look at her, he received a shock. Here was something new and unexpected. With a thud, it dropped down into his mind. Crash! For at the sound of his voice, she looked up confused and startled into his face. She had forgotten him. For the first time in all the years together, years of work, of semi-official attention to his least desire, yet of personal devotion as well, because she respected him and thought him wonderful, she had forgotten he was there. She had forgotten his existence beside her as a separate person. She, too, had been alone. It was here, perhaps, he first realized this singular thing that set this day apart from every other day that he had ever known. In reality, of course, it had come far sooner. Begun with the exquisite spring dawn before either of them was awake, had tentatively fluttered about his soul even while he stood waiting for her in the station, come softly nearer all the way in the train, dropped threads of its golden web about him, especially in that first beech wood, then moved with its swifter yet unhurried rush, until, here, now, in this startling moment, he realized it fully. Thus steal those changes o'er the sky, perhaps, that the day itself knows at sunrise, but the unobservant folk do not notice till the sun bursts out with fuller explanation, and they say, "The weather's changed! How delightful! How unexpected!" Lemaitre had never been observant very, of people. And then, in this deep, lonely valley, too full of sunshine to hold anything else, it seemed they stopped where the beech woods troops to the edge of the white road. No wind was here. It was still and silent. The leaves glittered motionless. They entered the thick trees together, she carrying the ginger beer bottles and that picture paper. He noticed that. The way she held it, almost clutched it, still unopened. Her face, he saw, was pale. Or was it merely the contrast of the shade? The trees were very big and wonderful. No birds sang. The network of dazzling sunshine patches in the gloom bewildered a little. Excuse me. At first they did not talk at all, and then in hushed voices. But it was only when they were some way into the wood, and she had put down the bottles, though not the paper, to pick a flower or spray of leaves, that he traced the singular, secret thrill to its source and understood why he had felt, no, not uneasy, but so strangely moved. For he had asked the sleepy driver of the way, and how they might reach Beaconsfield across these pen woods, and the old man's mumbled answer took no note of her. "It's a bit rough maybe on the other side, stony like and steep, but that ain't nothing for a gentleman when he's alone." The words disturbed him with a sense of darkness, yet of wonder, as though the old man had not noticed her, almost as though he had seen only one person, himself. They lunched among heather and bracken, just beside a pool of sunshine. In front lay a copse of pines with little beeches in between. The roof was thick just there, the stillness haunting. All the countryside, it seemed, this Sunday noon had gone to sleep, he and she alone left out of the deep, soft dream. He watched those pines, mothering the slim young beeches. The brilliant fresh green of whose lower branches, he thought, were like little platforms of level sunlight amid the general gloom, patches that had left the ground to escape by the upper air and had then been caught. "Look," he heard, "they make one think of laughter crept in unawares among a lot of solemn monks, or of children lost among grave elder beings whose ways are dull and sombre." It was his own thought continued, yet it was she, lying there beside him, who had said it. And all that wonderful afternoon she had this curious way of picking the thoughts out of his mind and putting them into words for him. "Look," he said again later, "you can always tell whether the wind moves a tree or not by the way it blows the branches. If it loves them, it tries to draw them out to go away with it. The others it merely shakes carelessly as it passes." It was the very thought in his own mind, too. Indeed, he had been on the point of saying it, but had desisted, feeling she would not understand, with the half-wish, though far less strong than before, that he were alone to enjoy it all in his own indulgent way. Then, even more swiftly, came that other strange sensation that he was alone all the time. More, that he was, for the first time in his life, most wonderfully complete and happy, all sense of isolation gone. He turned quickly the instant she had said it, but not quick enough. By the look in her great grey eyes, by the expression on the face where the discarded hat no longer hid it, he read the same amazing enigma he had half divined before. She, too, was alone. She had forgotten him again, forgotten his presence, radiant and happy without him, enjoying herself in her own way. She had merely uttered her delightful thought aloud, as if speaking to herself. How the afternoon, with its long sunny hours, passed so quickly away he never understood, nor how they made their way eventually to Beaconsfield, through other woods and over other meadows. He remembers only that the whole time he kept forgetting that she was with him, and then suddenly remembering it again. And once, on the grass, when they rested to drink the cold tea from its rather musty flask, he lit his pipe, and after a bit he dozed. He actually slept, for 10 minutes at her side. Yes, he slept. He heard her laughing at him, but the laughter was faint and very far away. It might just as well have been the wind in the cow parsley that said, "If you sleep, I shall change you. Change you while you sleep." And for some minutes after he woke again, it hardly seemed queer to him that he did not see her, for when he noticed her coming towards him from the hedgerow, her arms full of flowers and things, he only thought, "Oh, there she is," as though her absence, or his own absence in sleep, were not quite the common absences of the world. And he remembered that on the walk to the village her shoe hurt her, and he offered to carry her, and that then she took her shoe off and ran along the grass beside the lane the whole way. But it was at the inn where they had their supper that the oddest thing of all occurred, for the servant girl would insist on laying the table on the lawn for one. "Oh, expecting someone, are you?" she said at last. "Is that it?" And so brought plates and knives for two. The girl never once looked at his companion, almost as though she did not see her and seemed unaware of her presence. Lemaitre began to feel that he was dreaming. This was a dream country where the people had curious sight. He remembered the driver. In the dusk, they made their way to the station. They spoke no word. He kept losing sight of her. Once or twice he forgot who he was, but the whole amazing thing blazed into him most strongly, showing how it had seized upon his mind when he stood before the ticket window and hesitated. For a second, how many tickets should he buy? He stammered, at length, for 2 first class, but he was absurdly flustered for a second. It had actually occurred to him that they needed only 1 ticket. And suddenly, in the train, he understood, and his heart came up in his throat. They were alone. He turned to her where she lay in the corner, beat up, weary, crumpled among the leaves and flowers she had gathered. Like a hedgerow flower she looked, tired by the sunshine and the wind. In one hand was the picture paper, still unopened and unread, symbol of everyday reality. She was dozing, certainly, if not actually asleep. So he woke her with a touch, calling her name aloud. There were no words at first. He looked at her, coming up very close to do so, and she looked back at him, straight into his eyes, just as she did at home when they were working and he was explaining something important. And then her own eyes dropped, and a deep blush spread over all her face. "I wasn't asleep, really," she said, as he took her at last into his arms. "I was wondering when you'd find out." "Come to myself, you mean?" he asked, tremblingly. "Well," he hesitated as soon as she got breath, "that I am yourself, and that you are me. Of course, we're really only one. I knew it years, years and years ago. The end. Thank you for listening. That one went a lot faster than I remember. I feel like when I read that before, it took, there was like a lot more in there. I'm like, what did I, is like an abridged version or something? But yeah, there you go. Happy Pride. Again, never like explicitly stated by the author. Probably not really something I imagine he would be much aware of for the time in which he lived, but it you know, it sure feels like it. I think we can take that. Lovely and a bit melancholy. Yeah, exactly. Like frankly, I like that Blackwood had range. It wasn't just all endlessly like spooky monsters and things. Like sometimes it's just, that's unusual. That's supernatural without sort of like Mary Wilkins Freeman stuff as well. It's like she's writing ghost stories, but not like, ooh, ghost's gonna get you. It's more just, here are some things that are supernatural and unusual and unexpected. You like that one? Yeah, I really like that one. If nothing else, because it's just like a lovely description of a really nice summer's day. You know, it's just like looking at a nice picture of a summer day, isn't it? Well, yes, but good story in there too. But yeah, it felt fitting for the kind of weather that we're experiencing at the moment, and frankly, the sort of places it'd be really lovely to be in this weather. I am far too suburban. You prefer these sorts of stories and the ones that go for jump scares. If you can write jump scares, you absolutely can write jump scares. What good examples? Well, the thing is, the examples that I would cite aren't like you need to be reading the book to read the jump scare, but John Dies at the End absolutely has at least 2 or 3 like for me excellently executed. Hey, that's alliteration. Put that in your English lit essay. Jump scares. Like there's, because the way that those are written is the way that those jump scares are written is like extremely matter of fact. It's just sort of describing a thing that is happening, and like the jump scare, which certainly in that story, because it's like an extremely over the top horror comedy thing, like it continues this matter of fact tone to describe something that has suddenly happened that is horrific and terrifying in some cases. Not every one that is described, not every jump scare that happens in it is handled that way. Has really affected one of the twisted ones. I do not know that. But I'm happy to hear about it. And so yeah, like that was, yeah, it's in John Dies at the End. There were definitely ones where I was like, oh wait, what, that, and it hits like a jump scare, because you're just reading this thing and there's just like this normal interaction that's happening between two people, and suddenly out of nowhere something shocking happens, and it just carries on in the same matter of fact tone, and you're just like, wait, what? And it hits like a jump scare. I haven't read Jade in a very long time. Me too, actually. I'm looking at it on my shelf because I organised my shelves the other week. Just as in reorganised them after Lucy and I like built me a new bookshelf, and no, Lucy built me a new bookshelf, and like we sorted my books onto it, and I was like, no, I need to have my literacy books all collected together, and then because I need more books, I still had space, so I was like, okay, then I'm going to put some of my favourites onto these shelves as well, so I can look at them and go, yeah, I've not read that one in a time. Yeah, I'm a big enjoyer of John Dies at the End. I know it's not one, frankly, it's not a book for everybody, and it's not one that everyone enjoys as much as I did. But yeah, it's, in terms of just like very simple, basic, not basic, but like very simply but well executed, like horror and jump scares and stuff. I frankly, yeah, learned a lot from that. had the passing thought of offering it a book club, but the immediate thought, no, yeah, it's like, if it's your kind of thing, it's your kind of thing, and if it's not, you're probably gonna have a bad time reading it. So yeah, honestly, I feel like House of Leaves also does a good job of. That's one that I have also seen people citing as a good example of a literary jump scare that it does. Kind of due to just the completely wacky, weird, out there nature of what it is as a book and what it's doing. It, like, yeah, again, it's the kind of, it is literally a book where you turn the page and you don't know what you're going to see. And so you just flip the page over and just like, what? Why is there now just a large, like, 2-inch black square in the middle of this page, and all the typography is arrayed around it? That's not, well, yeah, I didn't expect that. Good book, another one that I should reread. Not super your kind of thing, but you enjoyed it. Yeah, I was gonna say, I couldn't remember whether, Andy, whether you were someone who'd read it or not, because when we had chatting the other night, and you were saying about your sort of relation with, well, with like horror video games, how, yeah, I feel like it sounds like you have a sort of complicated relationship with horror, in that you can appreciate it, but sometimes, well, no, it's too much, and that's probably true of most people with horror, to be fair. Yeah, I didn't know whether that was one that you'd read or not. Anyway, that's the first story done. You like horror a lot? Okay, yeah. I don't keep notes, probably for the best. Have a complicated relationship with gross horror. Right, yeah. Well, yeah, that again, yeah, it's, yeah, they are books that can have some gross horror in them. Yeah. We go on to the next story. What should we have? Should we have... Well, let's do Ancient Lights. Let's read Ancient Light. Get that. Another story about going for a lovely walk on a nice day where nothing bad ever happened. Where's the one? I just making sure, like, I pick, because I have it in 2 different places. Pick the one that I have read before, just in case there's any, like, markup that I did for myself. Just going to check the other one. Bear with me. But it's tame, so I'm not under any immediate danger. I think that is the one that I read before, but I hate that page formatting. And it doesn't look like I wrote any notes to myself in it, so I'm going to read this. None of this affects you. You just get to sit and listen. It's great. Right, let's have another story. This is also by Algernon. They're all by Algernon Blackwood. All of them. All stories. This is Ancient Lights. From Southwater, where he left the train, the road led due west. That he knew. For the rest, he trusted to luck, being one of those born walkers who dislike asking the way. He had that instinct, and, as a rule, it served him well. A mile or so due west along the sandy road till you come to a stile on the right, then across the fields. You'll see a red house straight before you. He glanced at the postcard's instructions once again, and once again he tried to decipher the scratched-out sentence, without success. It had been so elaborately inked over that no word was legible. Inked-out sentences in a letter were always enticing. He wondered what it was that had to be so very carefully obliterated. The afternoon was boisterous, with a tearing, shouting wind that blew from the sea across the Sussex Weald. Massive clouds with rounded, piled-up edges cannoned across gaping spaces of blue sky. Far away, the line of downs swept the horizon like an arriving wave. Chanctonbury Ring rode their crest, a scudding ship, hull down before the wind. He took his hat off and walked rapidly, breathing great draughts of air with delight and exhilaration. The road was deserted. No horsemen, bicycles, or motors, not even a tradesman's cart. No single walker. But anyhow, he would never have asked the way. Keeping a sharp eye for the stile, he pounded along, while the wind tossed the cloak against his face and made waves across the blue puddles in the yellow road. The trees showed their underleaves of white. The bracken and the high new grass bent all one way. Great life was in the day, high spirits and dancing everywhere. And for a Croydon surveyor's clerk just out of the office, this was like a holiday at the sea. It was a day for high adventure, and his heart rose up to meet the mood of nature. His umbrella, with the silver ring, ought to have been a sword, and his brown shoes should have been top boots, with spurs upon the heels. Where hid the enchanted castle, and the princess with the hair of sunny gold? His horse. The stile came suddenly into view, and nipped adventure in the bud. Everyday clothes took him prisoner again. He was a surveyor's clerk, middle-aged, earning £3 a week, coming from Croydon to see about a client's proposed alterations in a wood, something to ensure a better view from the dining-room window. Across the fields, perhaps a mile away, he saw the red house gleaming in the sunshine, and resting on the stile a moment to get his breath, he noticed a copse of oak and hornbeam on the right. "Aha!" he told himself. "So that must be the wood he wants to cut down to improve the view. I'll have a look at it." There were boards up, of course, but there was an inviting little path as well. "Not a trespasser," he said. "It's part of my business, this is." He scrambled awkwardly over the gate and entered the copse. A little round would bring him to the field again. But the moment he passed among the trees, the wind ceased shouting and a stillness dropped upon the world. So dense was the growth that the sunshine only came through in isolated patches. The air was close. He mopped his forehead and put his green felt hat on, but a low branch knocked it off again at once, and as he stooped, an elastic twig swung back and stung his face. There were flowers along both edges of the little path. Glades opened on either side. Ferns curved about in damper corners, and the smell of earth and foliage was rich and sweet. It was cooler here. What an enchanting little wood, he thought, turning down a small green glade where the sunshine flickered like silver wings. How it danced and fluttered and moved about. He put a dark blue flower in his buttonhole. Again his hat, caught by an oak branch as he rose, was knocked from his head, falling across his eyes. And this time he did not put it on again. Swinging his umbrella, he walked on with uncovered head, whistling rather loudly as he went. But the thickness of the trees hardly encouraged whistling, and something of his gaiety and high spirits seemed to leave him. He suddenly found himself treading circumspectly and with caution. The stillness of the wood was so peculiar. There was a rustle among the ferns and leaves, and something shot across the path 10 yards ahead, stopped abruptly an instant with head cocked sideways to stare, then dived again beneath the underbrush with the speed of a shadow. He started like a frightened child, laughing the next second that a mere pheasant could have made him jump. In the distance he heard wheels upon the road, and wondered why the sound was pleasant. "Good old butcher's cart," he said to himself, then realized that he was going in the wrong direction and had somehow got turned around, for the road should be behind him, not in front. And he hurriedly took another narrow glade that lost itself in greenness to the right. "That's my direction, of course," he said. The trees has mixed me up a bit, it seems. Then found himself abruptly by the gate he had first climbed over. He had merely made a circle. Surprise became almost discomfiture then, and a man, dressed like a gamekeeper in browny green, leaned against the gate, hitting his legs with a switch. "I'm making for Mr. Lumley's farm," explained the walker. "It is his wood, I believe." Then stopped dead, because it was no man at all, but merely an effect of light and shade and foliage. He stepped back to reconstruct the singular illusion, but the wind shook the branches roughly here on the edge of the wood, and the foliage refused to reconstruct the figure. The leaves all rustled strangely, and just then the sun went behind a cloud, making the whole wood look otherwise. Yet how the mind could be thus doubly deceived was indeed remarkable, for it almost seemed to him the man had answered, spoken. Or was this the shuffling noise the branches made, and had pointed with his switch to the notice board upon the nearest tree? The words rang on in his head, but of course he had imagined them. "No, it's not his wood, it's ours." And some village wit, moreover, had changed the lettering on the weather-beaten board, for it read, quite plainly, "Trespassers will be persecuted." And while the astonished clerk read the words and chuckled, he said to himself, thinking what a tale he'd have to tell his wife and children later, "The bloomin' wood has tried to shut me out, but I'll go on in again. Why, it's only a matter of a square acre at most. I'm bound to reach the field on the other side if I keep straight on." He remembered his position in the office. He had a certain dignity to maintain. The cloud passed from below the sun, and light splashed suddenly in all manner of unlikely places. The man went straight on. He felt a touch of puzzling confusion somewhere. This way the copse had of shifting from sunshine into shadow doubtless troubled sight a little. To his relief, at last, a new glade opened through the trees and disclosed the fields with a glimpse of the red house in the distance at the far end. But the little wicket gate that stood across the path had first to be climbed, and as he scrambled heavily over, for it would not open, he got the astonishing feeling that it slid off sideways beneath his weight and towards the wood. Like the moving staircases at Harrods and Earl's Court, it began to glide off with him. It was quite horrible. He made a violent effort to get down before it carried him into the trees, but his feet became entangled with the bars and umbrella, so that he fell heavily upon the farther side, arms spread across the grass and nettles, boots clutched between the first and second bars. He lay there a moment like a man crucified upside down, and while he struggled to get disentangled, feet, bars, and umbrella formed a regular net, he saw the little man in browny green go past him with extreme rapidity through the wood. The man was laughing. He passed across the glade some 50 yards away, and he was not alone this time. A companion, like himself, went with him. The clerk, now upon his feet again, watched them disappear into the gloom of green beyond. "They're tramps, not gamekeepers," he said to himself, half mortified, half angry. But his heart was thumping dreadfully, and he dared not utter all his thought. He examined the wicket gate, convinced it was a trick gate somehow, then went hurriedly on again, disturbed beyond belief to see that the glade no longer opened into fields, but curved away to the right. What in the world had happened to him? His sight was so utterly at fault. Again the sun flamed out abruptly and lit the floor of the wood with pools of silver, and at the same moment a violent gust of wind passed shouting overhead. Drops fell clattering everywhere upon the leaves, making a sharp pattering as of many footsteps. The whole copse shuddered and went moving. "Rain, by George!" thought the clerk, and feeling for his umbrella, discovered he had lost it. He turned back to the gate and found it lying on the farther side. To his amazement, he saw the fields at the far end of the glade, the red house too, ashine in the sunset. He laughed then, for, of course, in his struggle with the gate, he had somehow got turned round, and fallen back instead of forwards. Climbing over, this time quite easily, he retraced his steps, The silver band he saw had been torn from the umbrella. No doubt his foot, a nail or something had caught in it and ripped it off. The clerk began to run. He felt extraordinarily dismayed. But while he ran, the entire wood ran with him, round him, to and fro, trees shifting like living things, leaves folding and unfolding, trunks darting backwards and forwards, and branches disclosing enormous empty spaces, then closing up again before he could look into them. There were footsteps everywhere, and laughing, crying voices, and crowds of figures gathering just behind his back till the glade, he knew, was thick with moving life. The wind in his ears, of course, produced the voices and the laughter, while sun and clouds, plunging the copse alternately in shadow and bright dazzling light, created the figures. But he did not like it, and he went as fast as ever his sturdy legs could take him. He was frightened now. This was no story for his wife and children. He ran like the wind, but his feet made no sound upon the soft, mossy turf. Then, to his horror, he saw that the glade grew narrow. Nettles and weeds stood thick across it. It dwindled down into a tiny path, and 20 yards ahead it stopped finally, and melted off among the trees. What the trick gate had failed to achieve, this twisting glade accomplished easily, carried him in bodily among the dense and crowding trees. There was only one thing to do. Turn sharply and dash back again, run headlong into the life that followed at his back, followed so closely too that now it almost touched him, pushing him in. And with reckless courage this was what he did. It seemed a fearful thing to do. He turned with a sort of violent spring, head down and shoulders forward, hands stretched before his face. He made the plunge. Like a hunted creature he charged full tilt the other way, meeting the wind now in the face. Good Lord! The glade behind him had closed up as well. There was no longer any path at all. Turning round and round like an animal at bay, he searched for an opening, a way of escape, searched frantically, breathlessly, terrified now in his bones. But foliage surrounded him. Branches blocked the way. The trees stood close and still, unshaken by a breath of wind, and the sun dipped that moment behind a great black cloud. The entire wood turned dark and silent. It watched him. Perhaps it was this final touch of sudden blackness that made him act so foolishly, as though he had really lost his head. At any rate, without pausing to think, he dashed headlong in among the trees again. There was a sensation of being stiflingly surrounded and entangled, and that he must break out at all costs, out and away into the open of the blessed fields and air. He did this ill-considered thing, and apparently charged straight into an oak that deliberately moved into his path to stop him. He saw it shift across a good full yard, and being a measuring man, accustomed to theodolite and chain, he ought to know. He fell, saw stars, and felt 1,000 tiny fingers tugging and pulling at his hands and neck and ankles. The stinging nettles, no doubt, were responsible for this. He thought of it later. At the moment, it felt diabolically calculated. But another remarkable illusion was not so easily explained. For all in a moment, it seemed, the entire wood went sliding past him with a thick, deep rustling of leaves and laughter, myriad footsteps, and tiny little active, energetic shapes. 2 men in browny green gave him a mighty hoist, and he opened his eyes to find himself lying in the meadow beside the stile where first his incredible adventure had begun. The wood stood in its usual place and stared down upon him in the sunlight. There was the red house in the distance, as before. Above him grinned the weather-beaten notice board. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Dishevelled in mind and body, and a good deal shaken in his official soul, the clerk walked slowly across the fields. But on the way he glanced once more at the postcard of instructions and saw with dull amazement that the inked-out sentence was quite legible after all, beneath the scratches made across it. "There is a shortcut through the wood I want cut down, if you care to take it." Only care was so badly written it looked more like another word. The C was uncommonly like D. "That's the copse that spoils my view of the downs, you see," his client explained to him later, pointing across the fields and referring to the ordnance map beside him. "I want it cut down and a path made so and so." His finger indicated direction on the map. "The fairy wood, it's still called, and it's far older than this house. Come now, if you're ready, Mr. Thomas, we might go out and have a look at it." The end. Thank you for listening. There we go. Walking in a spooky woods that doesn't want to be cut down. Love you some spooky trees? Yeah, me too. I like the stakes and the peril of that one. Again, it's not like, ooh, trees are gonna kill you. It's like maybe, but it's not like actively murderous. It's just it's weird. Get out. It's good. Right, you know what? I said I was going to keep it short, but let's still take a break and come back in 5 minutes. I've read that one before? I have, yes. All the ones tonight I have read before. At least once. I may have actually done some of them twice, but I've sort of had the realization recently that, like, there's no rule that says you can't... There's no rule that says a dog can't play basketball. And there's no rule that says you can't actually just reread a story on stream. Like, if there's a good story and you feel like reading it, you can just do that. They can't stop you. Some stories are worth rereading. Exactly. I honestly don't reread enough things that I've enjoyed. Kind of because I struggle to do that. Because I feel my brain go, no, we know this one. That's fine. You just, come on, skip to the end, get to something new. Because my brain craves novelty. Blackwood does spooky summer vibes well. He really does. Like, that one felt a little bit more, maybe autumnal, sort of September, start of October kind of vibes. But yeah, it still fits. Good, because you definitely remember that one. Yeah, no, don't worry. You didn't just like imagine it. That we have done that one before. Yeah, I'm gonna go to a break and just move around, stretch it, maybe turn the fan on for 5 minutes and just stand in front of it and splash lukewarm tap water on myself. And then see you back here in 5 minutes. I've got, 2 more stories, which probably run to about the same time. Let's see how we go. So see you back here in 5 minutes. Bye for now. I was definitely. How long was it? How long ago did the timer run? I was just sitting in front of the fan. I just went and like threw water all over myself deliberately, not like the one time that I knocked a pint glass over and ruined a laptop live on stream. But intentionally splashed, as I said. It's just coming out the tap, room temperature. It's sad, and I was just sitting in front of a fan, and then looked up and saw, oh, the time's done, I should be back. It wasn't exactly 5-minute break for the timestamps on chat. Hell yeah. I guess. Sure. Okay, that sounds good. Great. Nice one. Good job, everybody. No one embarrassed themselves. Again, it's my stream. I'll do what I like. And including making a bunch of chair noises I adjust. Right. Are we good? How are we all coping? How are we all keeping? Is everyone doing okay? You know what? After how Thursday's stream went on the Longest John's channel, I'm glad to look over at OBS and see my CPU usage is sat at 1.5%, rather than the 50% that it jumped up to whilst Dave and I were playing FBC Firebreak, which is terrifying to see. Like, this computer is not a slouch, and apparently that game... that and OBS do not play nice together, it seems. For me, on this setup, and I don't know why. And I zoned out, so you believe it's 5 minutes? Yeah. Seems more or less, roughly, you know, give or take, around about there. Right. Let's have another story. What do I pinned the transfer up at the top? Great. Good job, past me. That's now the one that I'm going to find, which is in this book. Is this the one? This is from the book that had a bunch of weird typos in it, where it seemed evident that they had like scanned this with like a hand scanner or something. Okay, I'm just skimming through to see what stuff. Okay, yeah, we don't read that sentence or that description. That's fine. No, this looks okay. This is fine. No major corrections. We're all good. Gonna put yourself to bed and use the stream as a bedtime story? Nice. Indeed. Oh, work tomorrow starts at 6. Oof, yeah, good luck. I hope that goes okay. Yes, indeed. Why is that seems weirdly... Sorry, just fiddling with my mic, trying to straighten it up a little bit. In June? Sorry. Right. Let's have a story, if we're ready. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we're ready. No one else needs to be ready. You do what you like. I'm here with a book. Big sip of water, and then let's go. This is The Transfer by Algernon Blackwood. The child began to cry in the early afternoon, about 3 o'clock to be exact. I remember the hour because I had been listening with secret relief to the sound of the departing carriage. Those wheels fading to the distance down the gravel drive with Mrs. Freen and her daughter Gladys, to whom I was governess, meant for me some hours' welcome rest, and the June day was oppressively hot. Moreover, there was this excitement in the little country household that had told upon us all, but especially upon myself. This excitement, running delicately behind all the events of the morning, was due to some mystery, and the mystery was, of course, kept concealed from the governess. I had exhausted myself with guessing and keeping on the watch, for some deep and unexplained anxiety possessed me, so that I keep thinking of my sister's dictum that I was really much too sensitive to make a good governess, and that I should have done far better as a professional clairvoyant. Mr. Freen, Senior, Uncle Frank, was expected for an unusual visit from town about tea-time. That I knew. I also knew that his visit was concerned somehow with the future welfare of little Jamie, Gladys' 7-year-old brother. More than this, indeed, I never knew, and this missing link makes my story in a fashion incoherent, an important bit of the strange puzzle left out. I only gathered that the visit of Uncle Frank was to a condescending nature, that Jamie was told he must be upon his very best behaviour to make a good impression, and that Jamie, who had never seen his uncle, dreaded him horribly in advance. Then, trailing thinly through the dying crunch of the carriage wheels this sultry afternoon, I heard the curious little wail of the child's crying, with the effect, wholly unaccountable, that every nerve in my body shot its bolt electrically, bringing me to my feet with a tingling of unequivocal alarm. Positively, the water ran into my eyes. I recalled his white distress that morning when told that Uncle Frank was motoring down for tea, and that he was to be very nice indeed to him. It had gone into me like a knife. All through the day, indeed, had run this nightmare quality of terror and vision. "The man with the enormous face?" he had asked in a little voice of awe, and then gone speechless from the room in tears that no amount of soothing management could calm. That was all I saw, and what he meant by "the enormous face" gave me only a sense of vague presentiment. But it came as anticlimax somehow, a sudden revelation of the mystery and excitement that pulsed beneath the quiet of the stifling summer day. I feared for him, for of all that commonplace household I loved Jamie best, though professionally I had nothing to do with him. He was a high-strung, ultra-sensitive child, and it seems to me that no one understood him, least of all his honest, tender-hearted parents, so that his little wailing voice brought me from my bed to the window in a moment like a call for help. The haze of June lay over that big garden like a blanket. The wonderful flowers, which were Mr. Freen's delight, hung motionless. The lawns, so soft and thick, cushioned all other sounds. Only the limes and huge clumps of golden roses hummed with bees. Through this muted atmosphere of heat and haze, the sound of the child's crying floated faintly to my ears, from a distance. Indeed, I wonder now that I'd heard it at all, for the next moment I saw him down beyond the garden, standing in his white sailor suit alone, 200 yards away. He was down by the ugly patch where nothing grew, the forbidden corner. A faintness then came over me at once, a faintness as of death, when I saw him there, of all places, where he never was allowed to go, and where, moreover, he was usually too terrified to go. To see him standing solitary in that singular spot, above all to hear him crying there, bereft me momentarily of the power to act. Then, before I could recover my composure sufficiently to call him in, Mr. Freen came round the corner from the lower farm with the dogs, and seeing his son, performed that office for me. In his loud, good-natured, hearty voice he called him, and Jamie turned and ran as though some spell had broken just in time, ran into the open arms of his fond but uncomprehending father, who carried him indoors on his shoulder, while asking what all this hubbub was about. And at their heels the tailless sheep-dogs followed, barking loudly, and performing what Jamie called their gravel dance, because they ploughed up the moist, rolled gravel with their feet. I stepped back swiftly from the window lest I should be seen. Had I witnessed the saving of the child from fire or drowning, the relief could hardly have been greater. Only Mr. Freen, I felt sure, would not say and do the right thing quite. He would protect the boy from his own vain imaginings, yet not with the explanation that could really heal. They disappeared behind the rose trees, making for the house. I saw no more till later, when Mr. Freen, Senior, arrived. To describe the ugly patch as singular is hard to justify, perhaps, yet some such word is what the entire family sought, though never, never used. To Jamie and myself, though equally we never mentioned it, that treeless, flowerless spot was more than singular. It stood at the far end of the magnificent rose garden, a bald, sore space where the black earth showed uglily in winter, almost like a piece of dangerous bog, and in summer baked and cracked with fissures where green lizards shot their fire in passing. in contrast to the rich luxuriance of death and midlife, a centre of disease that cried for healing lest it spread. But it never did spread. Behind it stood the thick wood of silver birches and, glimmering beyond, the orchard meadow where the lambs played. The gardeners had a very simple explanation of its bareness, that the water all drained off it owing to the lie of the slopes immediately about it, holding no remnant to keep the soil alive. I cannot say. It was Jamie who felt its spell and haunted it, who spent whole hours there, even while afraid, and for whom it was finally labelled strictly out of bounds, because it stimulated his already big imagination, not wisely but too darkly. It was Jamie who buried ogres there and heard it crying in an earthy voice, swore that it shook its surface sometimes while he watched it, and secretly gave it food in the form of birds or mice or rabbits he found dead upon his wanderings. And it was Jamie who put so extraordinarily into words the feeling that the horrid spot had given me from the moment I first saw it. "It's bad, Miss Gould," he told me. "But, Jamie, nothing in nature is bad, exactly, only different from the rest sometimes." "Miss Gould, if you please, then it's empty. It's not fed. It's dying because it can't get the food it wants." And when I stared into the little pale face where the eyes shone so dark and wonderful, seeking within myself for the right thing to say to him, he added, with an emphasis and conviction that made me suddenly turn cold, "Miss Gould," he always used my name like this in all his sentences, "is hungry, don't you see? But I know what would make it feel all right." Only the conviction of an earnest child, perhaps, could have made so outrageous a suggestion worth listening to for an instant. But for me, who felt that things an imaginative child believed were important, it came with a vast disquieting shock of reality. Jamie, in this exaggerated way, had caught at the edge of a shocking fact. A hint of dark, undiscovered truth had leaped into that sensitive imagination. Why there lay horror in the words, I cannot say, but I think some power of darkness trooped across the suggestion of that sentence at the end. "I know what would make it feel all right." I remember that I shrank from asking explanation. Small groups of other words, veiled fortunately by his silence, gave life to an unspeakable possibility that hitherto had lain at the back of my own consciousness. The way it sprang to life proves, I think, that my mind already contained it. The blood rushed from my heart as I listened. I remember that my knees shook. Jamie's idea had been all along, my own as well. And now, as I lay down on my bed and thought about it all, I understood why the coming of his uncle involved somehow an experience that wrapped terror at its heart. With a sense of nightmare certainty that left me too weak to resist the preposterous idea, too shocked, indeed, to argue or reason it away, this certainty came with its full, black blast of conviction, and the only way I can put it into words, since nightmare horror really is not properly tellable at all, seems this: that there was something missing in that dying patch of garden, something lacking that it ever searched for, something once found and taken that would turn it rich and living as the rest. More, that there was some living person who could do this for it. Mr. Freen, Senior, in a word, Uncle Frank, was this person who, out of his abundant life, could supply the lack, unwittingly. For this connection between the dying, empty patch and the person of this vigorous, wealthy, and successful man had already lodged itself in my subconsciousness before I was aware of it. Clearly, it must have lain there all along, though hidden. Jamie's words, his sudden pallor, his vibrating emotion of fearful anticipation had developed the plate, but it was his weeping alone there in the forbidden corner that had printed it. The photograph shone, framed before me in the air. I hid my eyes, but for the redness, The charm of my face goes to pieces unless my eyes are clear. I could have cried. Jamie's words that morning about the enormous face came back upon me like a battering ram. Mr. Freen, Senior, had been so frequently the subject of conversation in the family since I came. I had so often heard him discussed, and had then read so much about him in the papers. His energy, his philanthropy, his success with everything he laid his hand to, that a picture of the man had grown complete within me. I knew him as he was, within, or as my sister would have said, clairvoyantly. And the only time I saw him, when I took Gladys to a meeting where she was chairman, and later felt his atmosphere and presence while for a moment he patronizingly spoke with her, had justified the portrait I had drawn. The rest, you may say, was a woman's wild imagining, but I think rather it was the kind of divining intuition which women share with children. If souls could be made visible, I would stake my life upon the truth and accuracy of my portrait. For this, Mr. Freen was a man who drooped alone, but grew vital in a crowd, because he used their vitality. He was a supreme, unconscious artist in the science of taking the fruits of others' work and living for his own advantage. He vampired, unknowingly no doubt, every one with whom he came in contact, left them exhausted, tired, listless. Others fed him, so that while in a full room he shone, alone by himself and with no life to draw upon, he languished and declined. In the man's immediate neighbourhood you felt his presence draining you. He took your ideas, your strength, your very words, and later used them for his own benefit and aggrandizement. Not evilly, of course. The man was good enough, but you felt that he was dangerous owing to the facile way he absorbed into himself all loose vitality that was to be had. His eyes and voice and presence devitalized you. Life, it seemed not highly organized enough to resist, must shrink from his too near approach and hide away for fear of being appropriated, or fear, that is, of death. Jamie, unknowingly, put in the finishing touch to my unconscious portrait. The man carried about with him some silent, compelling trick of drawing out all your reserves, then swiftly pocketing them. At first you would be conscious of taut resistance. This would slowly shade off into weariness. The will would become flaccid. Then you either moved away or yielded, agreed to all he said with a sense of weakness pressing ever closer upon the edges of collapse. With a male antagonist it might be different, but even then the effort of resistance would generate force that he absorbed and not the other. He never gave out. Some instinct taught him how to protect himself from that. To human beings, I mean, he never gave out. This time it was a very different matter. He had no more chance than a fly before the wheels of a huge, what Jamie used to call a traction engine. So this was how I saw him. A great human sponge, crammed and soaked with the life or proceeds of life absorbed from others, stolen. My idea of a human vampire was satisfied. He went about carrying these accumulations of the life of others. In this sense, his life was not really his own. For the same reason, I think, it was not so fully under his control as he imagined. And, in another hour, this man would be here. I went to the window. My eye wandered to the empty patch, dull black there amid the rich luxuriance of the garden flowers. It struck me as a hideous bit of emptiness, yawning to be filled and nourished. The idea of Jamie playing round its bare edge was loathsome. I watched the big summer clouds above, the stillness of the afternoon, the haze. The silence of the overheated garden was oppressive. I had never felt a day so stifling, motionless. It lay there, waiting. The household, too, was waiting. Waiting for the coming of Mr. Freen from London in his big motor car. And I shall never forget the sensation of icy shrinking and distress with which I heard the rumble of the car. He had arrived. Tea was all ready on the lawn beneath the lime trees, and Mrs. Frean and Gladys, back from their drive, were sitting in wicker chairs. Mr. Frean Jr. was in the hall to meet his brother, but Jamie, as I learned afterwards, had shown such hysterical alarm, offered such bold resistance, that it had been deemed wiser to keep him in his room. Perhaps, after all, his presence might not be necessary. The visit clearly had to do with something on the uglier side of life. Money, settlements, or what not. I never knew exactly, only that his parents were anxious and that Uncle Frank had to be propitiated. It does not matter. Yet that has nothing to do with the affair. What has to do with it, or I should not be telling the story, is that Mrs. Frean sent for me to come down, in my nice white dress if I didn't mind, and that I was terrified yet pleased, because it meant that a pretty face would be considered a welcome addition to the visitor's landscape. Also, most odd it was, I felt my presence was somehow inevitable, that in some way it was intended that I should witness what I did witness. And the instant I came upon the lawn, I hesitate to set it down, it sounds so foolish, disconnected, I could have sworn, as my eyes met his, that a kind of sudden darkness came, taking the summer brilliance out of everything, and that I was caused by troops of small black horses that raced about us from his person to attack. After a first momentary approving glance, he took no further notice of me. The tea and talk went smoothly. I helped to pass the plates and cups, filling in pauses with little undertalk to Gladys. Jamie was never mentioned. Outwardly, all seemed well, but inwardly everything was awful, skirting the edge of things unspeakable, and so charged with danger that I could not keep my voice from trembling when I spoke. I watched his hard, bleak face. I noticed how thin he was, and the curious, oily brightness of his steady eyes. They did not glitter, but they drew you with a sort of soft, creamy shine. And everything he said or did announced what I may dare to call the suction of his presence. His nature achieved this result automatically. He dominated us all, yet so gently that until it was accomplished, no one noticed it. Before 5 minutes had passed, however, I was aware of one thing only. My mind focused exclusively upon it, and so vividly that I marvelled the others did not scream, or run, or do something violent to prevent it. And it was this: that, separated merely by some dozen yards or so, this man, vibrating with the acquired vitality of others, stood within easy reach of that spot of yawning emptiness, waiting and eager to be filled. Earth scented her prey. These two active centres were within fighting distance. He, so thin, so hard, so keen, yet really spreading large with the loose surround of others' life he had appropriated, so practised and triumphant. That other so patient, deep, with so mighty a draw of the whole earth behind it, and, so obviously aware that its opportunity at last had come. I saw it all, as plainly as though I watched two great animals prepare for battle, both unconsciously. Yet, in some inexplicable way, I saw it, of course, within me, and not externally. The conflict would be hideously unequal. Each side had already sent out emissaries. How long before I could not tell, for the first evidence he gave that something was going wrong with him was when his voice grew suddenly confused. He missed his words, and his lips trembled a moment and turned flabby. The next second, his face betrayed that singular and horrid change, growing somehow loose about the bones of the cheek, and larger, so that I remembered Jamie's miserable phrase. The emissaries of the two kingdoms, the human and the vegetable, had met, I make it out, in that very second. For the first time in his long career of battening on others, Mr. Frean found himself pitted against a vaster kingdom than he knew, and, so finding, shook inwardly in that little part that was his definite, actual self. He felt the huge disaster coming. Yes, John, he was saying in his drawling, self-congratulating voice. Sir George gave me the car. Gave it to me as a present. Wasn't it, And then he broke off, abruptly stammered, drew breath, stood up and looked uneasily about him. For a second there was a gaping pause. It was like the click which starts some huge machinery moving, that instant's pause before it actually starts. The whole thing, indeed, then went with the rapidity of machinery running down and beyond control. I thought of a giant's dynamo, working silently and invisible. "What's that?" he cried, in a soft voice charged with alarm. "What's that horrid place? And someone's crying there. Who is it?" He pointed to the empty patch. Then, before anyone could answer, he started across the lawn towards it, going every minute faster. Before anyone could move, he stood upon the edge. He leaned over, peering down into it. It seemed a few hours passed, but really they were seconds, for time is measured by the quality and not the quantity of sensations it contains. I saw it all with merciless photographic detail, sharply etched amid the general confusion. Each side was intensely active, but only one side, the human, exerted all its force in resistance. The other merely stretched out a feeler, as it were, from its vast potential strength. No more was necessary. It was such a soft and easy victory. Oh, it was rather pitiful. There was no bluster or great effort, on one side at least. Close by his side I witnessed it, for I, it seemed, alone had moved and followed him. No one else stirred, though Mrs. Freen clattered noisily with the cups, making some sudden impulsive gesture with her hands, and Gladys, I remember, gave a cry. It was like a little scream. "Oh, Mother, it's the heat, isn't it?" Mr. Freen, her father, was speechless, pale as ashes. But the instant I reached her side, it became clear what had drawn me there thus instinctively. Upon the other side, among the silver birches, stood little Jamie. He was watching. I experienced, for him, one of those moments that shake the heart. A liquid fear ran all over me, the more effective because unintelligible really. Yet I felt that if I could know all, and what lay actually behind, my fear would be more than justified. That the thing was awful, full of awe. And then it happened. A truly wicked sight, like watching a universe in action, yet all contained within a small square foot of space. I think he understood vaguely that if someone could only take his place, he might be saved, and that was why, discerning instinctively the easiest substitute within reach, he saw the child and called aloud to him across the empty patch. "James, my boy, come here." His voice was like a thin report, but somehow flat and lifeless, as when a rifle misses fire. Sharp yet weak, it had no crack in it. It was really supplication. And with amazement I heard my own ring out imperious and strong, though I was not conscious of saying it. "Jamie, don't move! Stay where you are!" But Jamie, the little child, obeyed neither of us. Moving up nearer to the edge, he stood there, laughing. I heard that laughter, but could have sworn it did not come from him. The empty, yawning patch gave out the sound. Mr. Freen turned sideways, throwing up his arms. I saw his hard, bleak face grow somehow wider, spread through the air and downwards. A similar thing I saw was happening at the same time to his entire person, for it drew out into the atmosphere in a stream of movement. The face for a second made me think of those toys of green India rubber that children pull. It grew enormous. But this was an external impression only. What actually happened, I clearly understood, was that all this vitality and life he had transferred from others to himself for years was now in turn being taken from him and transferred elsewhere. One moment on the edge he wobbled horribly. Then, with that queer sideways motion, Rapid yet ungainly, he stepped forward into the middle of the patch and fell heavily upon his face. His eyes, as he dropped, faded shockingly, and across the countenance was written plainly what I can only call an expression of destruction. He looked utterly destroyed. I caught a sound. Jamie? But this time not of laughter. It was like a gulp. It was deep and muffled, and it dipped away into the earth. Again I thought of a troop of small black horses galloping away down a subterranean passage beneath my feet, plunging into the depths, their tramping growing fainter and fainter into buried distance. In my nostrils was a pungent smell of earth. And then all passed. I came back into myself. Mr. Freen, Jr., was lifting his brother's head from the lawn where he had fallen from the heat, close beside the tea-table. He had never really moved from there. And Jamie, I learned afterward, had been the whole time asleep upon his bed upstairs, worn out with his crying and unreasoning alarm. Gladys came running out with cold water, sponge and towel, brandy too, all kinds of things. "Mother, it was the heat, wasn't it?" I heard her whisper, but I did not catch Mrs. Freen's reply. From her face it struck me that she was bordering on collapse herself. Then the butler followed, and they just picked him up and carried him into the house. He recovered even before the doctor came. But the queer thing, to me, is that I was convinced the others all had seen what I saw, only that no one said a word about it. And to this day no one has said a word. And that was perhaps the most horrid part of all. From that day to this I have scarcely heard a mention of Mr. Freen, Senior. It seemed as if he dropped suddenly out of life. The papers never mentioned him. His activities ceased, as it were. His afterlife, at any rate, became singularly ineffective. Certainly he achieved nothing worth public mention. But it may be only that, having left the employ of Mrs. Freen, there was no particular occasion for me to hear anything. The afterlife of that empty patch of garden, however, was quite otherwise. Nothing, so far as I know, was done to it by gardeners, or in the way of draining it or bringing in new earth, but even before I left in the following summer it had changed. It lay untouched, full of great, luscious, driving weeds and creepers, very strong, full-fed, and bursting with thick life. The end. Psychic Vampires, it's just Colin Robinson meets A Deadly Bit of Ground. That's your story. Yeah. Another one, again, it's just, he captures an uncomfortably hot summer day, does Mr. Blackwood. He does it well. Right. This last one should be very quick. So, where's my ear popping? I think I managed to get water into it, but who knows? I do like to live a little. Story. Let's link this in chat. This is I believe this one isn't actually the one I was thinking of. There is another one that I really like, which I don't actually remember if it's. I'm not sure which book it's in. It might be this one, but I feel like it's. Yeah, I don't know. I would need to find it. There's another one about a little boy going on a wander through the house late at night, and the house is kind of weird and spooky and haunted. Pretty sure that's a Blackwood, but I don't remember which one it is, or as I say, which of his books I have it's in. But that's yeah, it's to do with a kid. He finds like his grandfather's cane or something like that, or like a walking stick, I think, and like goes on a slightly spooky wander through a late night house that's a little bit messed up and spooky, and like returns the walking stick to his grandfather's ghost. Spoilers. And that's another one. I don't think it's like, 'cause these ones are like explicitly set during a summer. Well, the ones that like that one and 2 and 1 are both very much clearly written as being in the middle of a summer day. The Other Wing. Oh, good. Wow, good spot, Andy. Thank you. Well, I don't know. Oh no, it is in this one. It is in Day and Night Stories. Nice. Okay, it's in this collection. Yeah, but that sort of thing, that like, frankly, memories of being a kid late at night. You got the Google Food. Nice. Yeah, being a child in a house late at night when everyone else is asleep, and kind of the inherent weirdness of that. That's still something I associate with summer. I don't know, probably because, you know, it's summer, it's hot, you can't sleep, so you get up and go for a wander through the house, and you suddenly realise, sort of for the first time in your life, like, oh wait, I can do this, actually. Like, no, this sort of thing, like, okay, it's my bedtime, I go to bed, and like there's some kind of invisible force field at the door that stops you from leaving the room. Then it's like, oh, or I could actually just get up and wander out of my room at night, and you can't actually, if no one's there to see you do it and to stop you, you can just do that. And that kind of, yeah, I associate that with summer. But this is not that. This is a different story. This is linked at the top of chat. Being the last person awake when you're up after bedtime is the creepiest thing when you're a kid, right? It's, yeah. And I don't know, I feel like that sort of experience, those kind of memories, were for me quite formative, because it's always something that I go back to. And if I find like a piece of fiction of some kind that feels like that or evokes that in some way, I'm going to enjoy it. Excuse me. Yeah, I apologies if I'm burping down the mic at all. I'm trying not to, but it's getting away from me sometimes. Right, anyway, we have one last story, and I'm going to go on to it. It's a short one. It is called The House of the Past. One night, a dream came to me, and brought with her an old and rusty key. She led me across fields and sweet-smelling lanes, where the hedges were already whispering to one another in the dark of the spring, till we came to a huge gaunt house, with staring windows and lofty roof half hidden in the shadows of very early morning. I noticed that the blinds were of heavy black, and that the house seemed wrapped in absolute stillness. "This," she whispered in my ear, "is the house of the past. Come with me, and we will go through some of its rooms and passages, but quickly, for I have not the key for long, and the night is very nearly over. Yet, perchance, you shall remember." The key made a dreadful noise as she turned it in the lock, and when the great door swung open to an empty hall and we went in, I heard the sounds of whispering and weeping, and the rustling of clothes, as of people moving in their sleep and about to wake. Then, instantly, a spirit of intense sadness came over me, drenching me to the soul. My eyes began to burn and smart, and in my heart I became aware of a strange sensation, as of the uncoiling of something that had been asleep for ages. My whole being, unable to resist, at once surrendered itself to the spirit of deepest melancholy, and the pain in my heart, as the things moved and woke, became in a moment of time too strong for words. As we advanced, the faint voices and sobbings fled away before us into the interior of the house, and I became conscious that the air was full of hands held aloft, of swaying garments, of drooping tresses, and of eyes so sad and wistful that the tears, which were already brimming in my own, held back for wonder at the sight of such intolerable yearning. "Do not allow this sadness to overwhelm you," whispered the dream at my side. "It is not often they wake. They sleep for years and years and years. The chambers are all full, and unless visitors such as we come to disturb them, they will never wake of their own accord. But when one stirs, the sleep of the others is troubled, and they, too, awake, till the motion is communicated from one room to another, and thus finally throughout the whole house. Then, sometimes, the sadness is too great to be borne, and the mind weakens. For this reason, memory gives to them the sweetest and deepest sleep she has, and she keeps this old key rusty from little use. But listen now, she added, holding up her hands. Do you not hear all through the house that trembling of the air, like the distant murmur of falling water? And do you not now, perhaps, remember? Even before she spoke, I had already caught faintly the beginning of a new sound, and now, deep in the cellars beneath our feet, and from the upper regions of the great house as well, I heard the whispering and the rustling and the inward stirring of the sleeping shadows. It rose like a cord swept softly from the huge unseen strings stretched somewhere among the foundations of the house, and its tremblings ran gently through all its walls and ceilings, and I knew that I heard the slow awakening of the ghosts of the past. Oh, me! With what terrible inrushing of sadness I stood with brimming eyes and listened to the faint dead voices of the long ago. For, indeed, the whole house was awakening. And there, presently, rose to my nostrils the subtle, penetrating perfume of age, of letters, long preserved, with ink faded and ribbons pale, of scented tresses, golden and brown, laid away, oh, how tenderly, among pressed flowers that still held the inmost delicacy of their forgotten fragrance, the scented presence of lost memories, the intoxicating incense of my past. My eyes overflowed, my heart tightened and expanded, and I yielded myself up without reserve to these old influences of sound and smell. These ghosts of the past, forgotten in the tumult of more recent memories, thronged round me, took my hands in theirs, and, ever whispering of what I had so long forgot, ever sighing, shaking from their hair and garments the ineffable odours of the dead ages, led me through the vast house, from room to room, from floor to floor. And the ghosts were not all equally clear to me. Some had, indeed, but the faintest life, and stirred me so little that they left only an indistinct, blurred impression in the air, while others gazed half reproachfully at me out of faded, colourless eyes, as if longing to recall themselves to my recollection, and then, seeing they were not recognized, floated back gently into the shadows of their room, to sleep again undisturbed till the final day, when I should not fail to know them. Many of them have slept so long, said the dream beside me, that they wake only with the greatest difficulty. Once awake, however, they know and remember you, even though you fail to remember them. For it is the rule in this house of the past that, unless you recall them distinctly, remembering precisely when you knew them and with what particular causes in your past evolution they were associated, they cannot stay awake. Unless you remember them when your eyes meet, unless their look of recognition is returned by you, they are obliged to go back to their sleep, silent and sorrowful, their hands unpressed, their voices unheard, to sleep and dream, deathless and patient, till— At this moment her words died away suddenly into the distance, and I became conscious of an overpowering sensation of delight and happiness. Something had touched me on the lips, and a strong, sweet fire flashed down into my heart and sent the blood rushing tumultuously through my veins. My pulses beat wildly, my skin glowed, my eyes grew tender, and the terrible sadness of the place was instantly dispelled as if by magic. Turning with a cry of joy that was at once swallowed up in the chorus of weeping and sighing round me, I looked. and instinctively stretched forth my arms in a rapture of happiness towards a vision of a face, hair, lips, eyes. A cloth of gold lay about the fair neck, and the old, old perfume of the East, ye stars, how long ago, was in her breath. Her lips were again on mine, her hair over my eyes, her arms about my neck, and the love of her ancient soul pouring into mine out of eyes still starry and undimmed. Oh, the fierce tumult, the untold wonder, if I could only remember! That subtle, mist-dispelling odour of many ages ago, once so familiar, before the hills of Atlantis were above the blue sea, or the sands had begun to form the bed of the Sphinx. Yet wait, it comes back. I begin to remember. Curtain upon curtain rises in my soul, and I can almost see beyond. But that hideous stretch of the years, awful and sinister, thousands upon thousands. My heart shakes, and I am afraid. Another curtain rises, and a new vista, farther than the others, comes into view, interminable, running to a point among thick mists. Lo, they too are moving, rising, lightening. At last I shall see. Already I begin to recall the dusky skin, the Eastern grace, the wondrous eyes that held the knowledge of Buddha and the wisdom of Christ before these had even dreamed of attainment. As a dream within a dream, it steals over me again, taking compelling possession of my whole being. The slender form, the stars in that magical eastern sky, the whispering winds among the palm trees, the murmur of the river's waves and the music of the reeds while they bend and sigh in the shallows on the golden sand. Thousands of years ago in some Aeonian distance. It fades a little and begins to pass, then seems again to rise. Oh, me, that smile of the shining teeth, those lace-veined lids. Oh, who will help me to recall, for it is too far away, too dim, and I cannot wholly remember. But my lips are still tingling, my arms still outstretched, it again begins to fade. Already there is the look of sadness too deep for words, as she realizes that she is unrecognized. She, whose mere presence could once extinguish for me the entire universe. And she goes back, slowly, mournfully, silently, to her dim, tremendous sleep, to dream and dream of the day when I must remember her, and she must come where she belongs. She peers at me from the end of the room where the shadows already cover her and win her back with outstretched arms to her age-long sleep in the house of the past. Trembling all over, with the strange odour still in my nostrils and the fire in my heart, I turned away and followed my dream up a broad staircase into another part of the house. As we entered the upper corridors, I heard the wind pass singing over the roof. Its music took possession of me until I felt as though my whole body were a single heart, aching, straining, throbbing as if it would break. And all because I heard the wind singing round this house of the past. But remember, whispered the dream, answering my unspoken wonder, that you are listening to the song it has sung for untold ages into untold myriad ears. It carries back so appallingly far, and in that simple dirge, profound in its terrible monotony, are the associations and recollections of the joys, griefs, and struggles of all your previous existence. The wind, like the sea, speaks to the inmost memory, she added, and that is why its voice is one of such deep spiritual sadness. It is the song of things forever incomplete, unfinished, unsatisfying. As we passed through the vaulted rooms, I noticed that no one stirred. There was no actual sound, only a general impression of deep, collective breathing like the heave of a muffled ocean. But the rooms, I knew at once, were full to the walls, crowded rows upon rows, and from the floors below rose ever the murmur of the weeping shadows as they returned to their sleep and settled down again in the silence, the darkness, and the dust. The dust. Ah, the dust that floated in this house of the past, so thick, so penetrating, so fine, it filled the throat and eyes without pain. So fragrant, it soothed the senses and stilled the aching of the heart. So soft, it parched the tongue without offence, yet so silently falling, gathering, settling over everything that the air held it like a fine mist, and the sleeping shadows wore it for their shrouds. And these are the oldest, said my dream, the longest asleep, pointing to the crowded rows of silent sleepers. None here have wakened for ages too many to count, and even if they woke you would not know them. They are like the others, all your own, but they are the memories of your earliest stages along the path of evolution. Some day, though, they will awake, and you must know them, and answer their questions, for they cannot die till they have exhausted themselves again through you who gave them birth. Oh, me, I thought, only half listening to or understanding these last words. What mothers, fathers, brothers may then be asleep in this room? What faithful lovers, what true friends, what ancient enemies? And to think that some day they will step forth and confront me, and I shall meet their eyes again, claim them, know them, forgive and be forgiven, the memories of all my past. I turned to speak to the dream at my side, but she was already fading into dimness, and, as I looked again, the whole house melted away into the flush of the eastern sky, and I heard the birds singing, and saw the clouds overhead, veiling the stars in the light of coming day. The end. Thank you for listening. Bang on 11 o'clock? Alright, let's go. Nice one. 1 second, Joey wishes to come in. He was howling and scratching through the end of that. Cat is here, so now my attention is split because I have windows open, and I do not wish for him to know that the windows are open. But yeah, that brings us to the end of the stream. Okay, sorry. She won't know about this because Lucy's just sent me a picture of herself on the train where she's been performing in London today. It's been a hot day, and London has a sort of magnifying effect on the heat. And you know, like concert performances are not, and it's basically she looks completely shattered. She just sent me a picture of herself on the train, and she looks wiped. So everyone send her some love and sympathy. Oh, ear indeed. But yeah, that brings us to the end of the stream. Thank you for coming out to listen. I hope you have enjoyed it. I hope, varying amounts of summertude sprinkled through those, but I hope it felt like a nice, chilled, summer themed, slightly weird evening of stories for you to listen. And a nice one. And yeah, honestly, I kind of like, now that we've spent a few years reading these stories and sort of building up this catalogue of stuff that we're familiar with, it's kind of nice to actually go back and sort of curate a little bit, like pick out ones that, like, oh yeah, these stories set a particular kind of vibe. We take that one and put these together, and it creates a theme. I'm enjoying doing that. It's kind of nice. I'm also at times kind of enjoying doing, I don't know if anyone who watches on YouTube, the thumbnails, I've been enjoying making those. it's extremely basic. It's just me going and finding some free-to-use stock images. Absolutely no AI-generated stuff. I try to avoid the free-to-use stock images that are just AI-generated nonsense. These all seem to be like photos taken authentically by people with photographic cameras. And yeah, those are kind of nice to... It is really just like take a photo, or not take it as in find a photo, do a little bit of image processing with it, basically add some filters, and pick a font to go with it. But I'm sort of enjoying doing it. Angeline, you got to go birthday dinner for your mum? Happy birthday to your mum. I hope it's a good time. Thank you for being here. Yeah, we're going to go. So yeah, that's what's been going there. It's been nice. It's been fun. And I will do more of it. But not now, because we're done. So, yeah, I'm not sure what the plan is for this week. Schedule might be a little bit disrupted for the next week, we'll say on the Discord. But yeah, you'll get notifications if and when we're live at the usual times. We might... I think Lucy suggested doing some kind of a podcast stream on Monday. So we might do that. Maybe. Keep an eye out for that. But yeah, otherwise, we will see you on the next one. Thank you for being here. Do I read somewhere? I will not... I'm probably going to go and watch Ari at Home, because I really enjoy his streams. It's the guy with the, like, music production rig that he just walks around New York carrying. It's, like, just built around him. And it's, like, walks around New York with that on. Making like live improvised music and just handing microphones to people, asking them to rap on it. It's just super impressive. Yeah, it's really cool to watch. But a bit of a vibe shift from here. So where do we want to go? You know what? I'm actually going to resub. Let's. I mean, this is also a vibe shift, but we don't get to raid Adam Seabats very often because we stream on a Saturday night. So let's go over there. Which means I need to open a window so that I also go over in the raid. That would be good. Yeah, thank you for being here. It's been a wonderful, lovely audience. We will see you in the next one. Have yourselves a good next half of the year, folks. Hate saying that. Goodbye.